Hi, these comments are for WA. This is Michael from bettertoeflscores.com. So you subscribed to my TOEFL speaking and writing feedback service. At bettertoeflscores.com, you'll notice I have a free TOEFL speaking and free TOEFL writing course. So there's also practice tests there that you can complete, and you can email those audio or written responses to those practice tests. You can email those to me, and I will give you feedback. And that's kind of how the service works. In addition, you can complete TPO, which means TOEFL Practice Online. If you find practice tests at YouTube, practice tests at Chinese websites, wherever you might find them, you can complete those practice tests and then email me those responses also. So let's get started. So you're doing independent speaking practice today. And the topic is, do you prefer living alone or living with a roommate when attending college? So I have the rubrics here, the independent speaking rubrics here, and I'm going to listen to your response here in just a minute. Okay, here we go. Let's go ahead and get started. And I'll listen to the whole thing one time without giving any feedback at all. I'm going to listen to it again the second time. I will provide feedback, audio feedback for you, and you'll see it in this video. And I'm also going to give you some written feedback I'll post in the email, so you can have that too. Okay, here we go.
Personally speaking, I prefer to live with the other people rather than living alone for two reasons. First of all, living together with other people is also money saving. For example, the people living with you will also share the rent. Not only rent of living, but also other expenses are also shared. For example, kitchen and these things. Secondly, it also provides us a better company, so one person living away from the home can be at peace without the company of his family members. For example, I remember when I came to UAE, I was very homesick in the beginning, but due to the company of my friends, I became very much social. And
Okay, so now let's take a look at where we are here. So my first impression, I've listened to thousands of practice tests, is I don't see you getting a 4, maybe not even a 3. I'm thinking you're probably between 2.5 and 3, according to the rubrics. So let's take a look at 2 here. And we have delivery, language use, and topic development. So in the 2 area, I see awkward intonation and choppy rhythm or pace. I think those are 2 areas that you can improve on with your delivery. Let's look at language use. We have limited range and control of grammar and vocabulary, I think, that prevent full expression of ideas. For the most part, basic sentence structures used successfully. I think that this area kind of describes a lot of how you speak English. And then we have the response is connected. You're definitely connected. This is probably a little bit better than maybe a low 3, but the problem is you're expressing mostly basic ideas with limited elaboration or details. So I think because of these rubrics here, you're probably not going to get in the 3 range or higher. That would be my guess right now. So I'm thinking you could be around 17 or 18 points out of 30 according to the IBT rubrics. All right, well, let's listen to it one more time. I'll give you some feedback as we go. Here we go.
personally speaking, I prefer to live with the other people rather than living alone for two.
So you say, I want to live with other people rather than living alone, but I would say I prefer to live with other people rather than to live alone or rather than live alone. So either use the base form live or to live. You want infinitive phrases on both sides of that sentence there. That's going to be more grammatically parallel. I think personally speaking is unnecessary because you said I. So that's taking up unnecessary words that you need to use elsewhere to help support your general ideas.
Reasons. First of all, living together with other people is also.
But living together other people, but together means other people. There's no need to say both. That's unnecessarily repetitious. But even then, you have to say living together with other people. Notice how you did not use that preposition there.
Living together with other people is
so living together other people, right? Look in the to area. It says structures and vocabulary may express mainly simple, short, and or general propositions. It says serial listing. You're kind of listing ideas, but not really connecting them all together with the right grammar. So that's kind of an issue. Okay, let's keep going.
also money saving. For example,
let me go back. I think you probably could phrase that a little bit better.
Money saving. For example, with other people is also money saving.
So is also money saving, but that's I would prefer that you say living with other people or living with roommates saves money instead of saying is money saving. It's you don't really the be verb is kind of a weak verb anyway. So if it's possible to rephrase without using the be verb, that's what I tell a lot of my students is try to use more solid, stronger verbs as opposed to using the be verb.
For example, the people living with you will also share the
but the people living with you, but why not say the people living with me or the people living with roommates? I think it's better to use the first or the third person point of view here.
Rent. Not only rent of living, but also other expenses are also shared. For example, kitchen and these things.
But other expenses are also shared, but you said kitchen. But how is that saving money? You could say you're sharing utilities. For example, the natural gas, electricity used for cooking in the kitchen maybe, or for heating the water in the kitchen, if you want to say that. I think that would be probably a better connection.
Secondly, it also provides us a better company. So one person living away from the home can be at peace without.
Notice, can be at peace without. That's where you have the choppy kind of speaking rhythm there. So you have some unnecessary or unnatural pauses in there. So you have to do a little bit better with what I call thought groups and blending. You need to be able to group together maybe 5 or 6 stressed syllables, then you have a pause, another 5 or 6 stressed syllables, followed by another pause.
The company of his family members. For example, I remember when I came to you.
Be careful. I like that you're using the transition word for example, but you've already used that previously, right? So you want to show a good range of vocabulary. So you might say something like, for instance, or case in point, or to illustrate. I think maybe. I think that might be helpful if you did that. So you want to you definitely want to use transition words, but use a range of them so you're not relying on the same one each time.
I was very homesick in the beginning, but due to the company of my friends, I became very much social and
Notice how you just kind of run out of time there. So you didn't really manage your time very well at the end. You need, I don't think the conclusion is as important as the introduction, but you definitely want, when you get near the end of the response, it sounds like you're finishing your ideas. But what it sounded like to me is you're kind of stopping in the middle of a thought. Didn't sound, it was abrupt in the ending there. Okay, now let's look at the written feedback. So I'm going to email this to you also so you can have this. So I put it into Microsoft Word. So your estimated score here is 18 to 20 points out of 30. So I'm looking at your level maybe 2.5 to 3. I'm going to see your speaking is fair. So your response demonstrates some relevant ideas, but there are noticeable weaknesses in delivery, language use, and topic development. So let's break it down. So delivery, fluency, and intonation. The rhythm of your speech was choppy, which disrupted the flow of your ideas. Mispronunciation of USA, I think that you said UA. It's a little confusing there because there is a country called United Arab Emirates, UAE. So, but we say USA or UAE. Notice, WA, when we use abbreviations, we put equal emphasis on each letter. So suggestions, practice speaking with connected thought groups. Instead of saying, I think it is better to live with others, try something like this. I think it is better to live with others because you can share responsibilities. Or maybe even better, you could say here, focus on your own experience because I. So record yourself reading a 150-word paragraph aloud in 60 seconds. Then compare your version with a fluent native speaker. Practice stress and intonation using shadowing techniques. You might mimic TOEFL sample responses. You're going to get one in this video on YouTube or from other TOEFL prep books. Okay, let's talk about language use. I already told you this in the audio. You said to live with other people, I think, would be better than living with other people for grammatical parallelism. Be careful about overusing the be verb. For example, if you want to say it's important, it is important. Instead of saying that, you can say sharing space helps people build conversation. This is going to be much stronger because you're using a gerund phrase as a subject. That shows some advanced grammar abilities. Instead of using the be verb, you're using helps, which is a regular verb. That's even better. And then helps people build cooperation. By saying cooperation, that's a pretty precise vocabulary word, and then you could give an example to illustrate that idea. The phrase, is money saving, is awkward. A clearer alternative would be help save money. Avoid the impersonal you. You learn to cooperate. You could say people learn to cooperate, or I learned to cooperate. Replace basic terms. For example, you said these things. I think the word things is probably one of the weakest type vocabulary words you can use for TOEFL speaking because it's only one syllable and it's very generic and it's a very basic word. So these things with vocabulary, you could say something like cooperation and communication are essential skills for adulthood. So by saying cooperation and communication, that's much more precise than saying these things. Suggestions. Keep a vocabulary journal. I don't know if you've ever thought of this, but you can record synonyms for basic words and categories or categorize them by topic. Maybe you have vocabulary for education, environment, relationships, and so on. Use sentence variety. Mix simple, compound, and complex sentences. Study transition words and phrases to improve coherence. So I think you did use for example, but my advice is to maybe use a variety of them. Just don't use the same one all the time. Okay, topic development. So your response has relevant ideas but lacks precise examples and full elaboration. I think that really describes what I just listened to. Your ideas sometimes feel undeveloped or unclear due to vague word choices like these things. So suggestions. Follow a very clear structure. State your opinion, give a reason, provide an example, summarize or restate your point. So let's look at kind of how that works. So the first statement is a more general topic. I prefer living with other people because it helps build cooperation. That's the more general idea. And the key here is this particular word here, cooperation. Then you have a transition word to help signal a detail. For instance, when I shared an apartment with my cousin, we divided chores and learned to compromise. This experience prepared me for real-life responsibilities. Okay, strategies and improvement. Record and reflect. After each practice, listen to your recording and identify areas where you hesitate or speak too quickly, use vague words, miss grammatical accuracy, and use the feedback that I'm giving you to re-record. Number 2, use TOEFL templates wisely. Develop flexible frameworks for answering independent topics, but adapt them to each topic. Avoid sounding robotic or memorized. Number 3, practice with feedback loops. After receiving feedback, rewrite your response, record it with improvements, compare both versions to hear the progress. Number 4, get feedback regularly. This is what you're doing. Your teacher's comments are incredibly valuable. Do not ignore them. Modify your future responses based on that advice so you can avoid repeating the same mistakes. That's how you get better. That's why I tell students, I tell them, I say, send me one speaking practice test per day, because I want you to get my comments and my feedback and then make some changes, and then send me a new speaking practice test incorporating those suggestions. That's how you get improvement. If you send me 3 or 4 practice tests all in the same day, you're just making the same mistakes over and over and over and over. The purpose is to stop making the mistakes and to start doing something different so you can score higher. That's what I want to help you do, is to stop doing these things I'm telling you you're doing, make some changes, and then send me more practice tests with the new changes. Eventually, it'll become natural to you. And at some point, you will be ready to take the TOEFL exam to get that magical score of 26. So, final note. So every time you apply the feedback, you improve your chances of reaching 26. Be patient, practice daily, focus on specific goals for each session, I should say. For example, maybe one day you focus on vocabulary, another day you might focus on delivery. So you will improve with intentional, consistent practice. That's the main thing. Now, let's listen to this is a model response where I've taken what you said and I've developed it a lot more. This takes approximately 45 to 47 seconds. So let's listen to this one. I prefer to live with other people because it helps save money and builds important social skills that are essential in adult life. For instance, when I shared an apartment with 2 classmates during college, we split the rent, groceries, and utility bills, which made the cost of living much more affordable for all of us. We even took turns cleaning the apartment and cooking meals, which helped us stay organized and respectful of each other's space. In addition, living with them taught me how to communicate clearly, solve problems calmly, and compromise when we disagreed about things like chores or noise. This experience not only made me more responsible, but also helped me feel supported and emotionally connected. Overall, I believe that living with others offers both financial advantages and meaningful life lessons, which is why I think it's a much better option than living alone in the USA. Right? So that's going to get you the 30 points out of 30, right? So notice the difference in the preciseness. My response is a lot more precise with the details than yours was. And of course, with my delivery, I have a much faster speaking rate because I'm a native speaker. Now, you may not be able to do exactly what I'm doing with the delivery, but that's the ultimate goal, is to try to sound as close to a native speaker as you possibly can. Alrighty, so thank you very much for completing this speaking practice test. I hope that this feedback will start you on a different path to improving your speaking so you can get the higher speaking score.